The penthouse is mine, Mark, and the 2 Lakeview units. We can split the rest. My brother Alex's voice was slick with false generosity over the phone. He'd already changed the locks. I stood in my Sterling Bridge office, staring out at the Chicago skyline, the phone feeling like a block of ice against my ear. Our parents' will stated we were to inherit the building 50-50, but Alex always believed he was the 50 that mattered more. "That's not how this works, Alex," I said, my voice dangerously calm. He laughed. "What are you going to do, little brother? I have the keys." A slow smile spread across my face. He had the keys, but I had the will. I, Mark Keller, was the estate executor, and he had just given me the perfect justification to burn his little kingdom to the ground. My brother Alex has always operated on a different plane of reality, one where his wants are everyone else's commands. He's the golden child, the charismatic salesman who could sell ice in a blizzard but never hold a real job. While I was building my financial advisory firm Sterling Bridge from nothing, he was building a mountain of debt our parents patiently paid off. They saw his potential. I saw the pattern. He'd flash that winning smile, ask for a small loan, and then act offended when you brought it up a year later. For my entire life, I was the responsible one, the backstop, the safety net he could jump on without a second thought. He saw me not as a brother, but as a utility, a resource to be tapped. But at 46, you get tired of being tapped. He thought his physical keys to a few doors gave him control. He forgot that as executor, I held the master key to the entire kingdom. And I was about to change all the locks. This wasn't the first time Alex had tried to lock me out of my own life. The memory came back sharp and bitter, like the Chicago wind off the lake in February. It was 15 years ago. I was 31, still grinding, trying to get Sterling Bridge Advisory off the ground. I had a solid business plan, a handful of promising clients, but I was operating out of my spare bedroom. I needed a real office, a proper address to signal legitimacy. I'd found the perfect small space in the Loop. The lease required a year up front, a significant but manageable sum. I went to our parents. It was the only time I had ever asked them for a substantial amount of money. I laid out my projections, my client list, my 5-year plan. My father looked it over, nodding slowly. "It's a big risk, Mark," he'd said. "Let us think on it." A week later, Alex called a family dinner. He arrived an hour late, smelling of expensive cologne and cheap champagne, and announced his latest brilliant idea, a subscription box service for artisanal dog treats. He had no business plan, just a ghost of an idea, sketched on a cocktail napkin, and a grin that could charm a snake. "It's revolutionary," he declared. "We'll be the Blue Apron for poodles." My mother clapped her hands in delight. My father, who just a week before had called my meticulously planned business a big risk, pulled out his checkbook right there at the dinner table. He didn't just give Alex a loan, he gave him a blank check for his seed capital. "He has such vision," my mother whispered to me, as if that explained everything. I never got the loan for my office space. I had to take a second mortgage on my condo and work 80-hour weeks for 2 years straight to make it happen. Alex's revolutionary business, Posh Paws, went bankrupt in 6 months, leaving a trail of angry investors and organic dog biscuit crumbs. My parents covered his debts without a word. They never saw the pattern. They saw his charisma as potential, and my stability as, well, just stable, expected. They never understood that my quiet success was built on the foundation of every risk they refused to take on me, while they poured their life savings into the black hole of his failures. This building wasn't just brick and mortar, it was the final validation of their life's work, their legacy. And Alex thought he could just snatch the crown jewels off the top, leaving me with the scraps. He thought I was still that 31-year-old kid, asking for permission. He forgot who built an empire from a spare bedroom, and who bankrupted a dog biscuit company. He had the keys, but I had the ledger. And the numbers, as I always knew, don't lie. The first call wasn't to Alex, it was to David Chen, our family's estate attorney for 20 years. David's office was even more Spartan than mine, a place where sentimentality went to die. I laid out the facts. Alex's seizure of the penthouse and Lakeview units, the changed locks, the phone call. David listened, his pen still. When I finished, he took a slow sip of water. "Mark, as executor, you have a fiduciary duty to the estate. That duty is to maximize its value and ensure an equitable distribution to all beneficiaries, as outlined in the will." He leaned forward slightly. "If one beneficiary's actions make an in-kind distribution, that is, splitting the physical property, unworkable or unfair, you are not only within your rights to liquidate the asset, you may be obligated to." He had just handed me a shield and a sword, forged in the fires of probate law. I had Chen draft the letter. It was a masterpiece of sterile legalese. It didn't mention years of resentment or bankrupt dog biscuit companies. It simply informed Mr. Alexander Keller that due to his unilateral actions rendering a cooperative management agreement untenable, I was, as executor, initiating the process to sell the property known as the, quote, Keller Building. The proceeds, it stated, would be distributed in cash, strictly according to the 50-50 split stipulated in our parents' will. I had it delivered by courier. Alex's call came less than an hour later. No greeting. "What the hell is this, Mark? You can't sell our building." His voice wasn't slick anymore. It was jagged, sharp with disbelief. "I can," I said, my tone flat, the same one I used with clients when discussing market volatility. "And I am. You made it impossible to split the property, so we're splitting the cash, 50-50, exactly as the will dictates." "This is a bluff, a pathetic scare tactic because you're mad about the penthouse," he sputtered. "I'm calling David. I'll have you removed as executor." "Go ahead," I said, a flicker of a smile playing on my lips. "David's the one who drafted the letter. He's already CC'd on all my correspondence." There was a moment of stunned silence on his end, the sound of a king realizing his castle was made of sand. I could almost hear the gears grinding in his head, searching for an angle, a charm, a threat that would work. He found nothing. "You wouldn't dare," he finally whispered. "You have the keys to 3 apartments, Alex," I said, and hung up. My next call was to Cassandra Vale. If Chicago real estate was a Shark Tank, Cassandra was the great white. Her firm, Apex Commercial, didn't sell condos. They moved entire city blocks. We met at a coffee shop, not the building. I didn't want Alex seeing her. I handed her the portfolio, the building's specs, the rent roll, the financials. She scanned the documents, her eyes moving with practiced efficiency. Solid asset, prime location. Low vacancy except for 3 units? She raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "The penthouse and the 2 best lake views," I confirmed. "Currently occupied by the other beneficiary. He won't be cooperative." Cassandra didn't flinch. "An uncooperative occupant is a negotiation point, not a deal breaker. We'll market it as a value-add opportunity. A new owner can evict, renovate, and triple the rent on those units. Some investors live for that." She slid a listing agreement across the table. "We can have a sign on the property by Friday." I looked at the document. It was more than a contract. It was a declaration of war. Alex thought he was locking me out. He never imagined I would just sell the whole fortress out from under him. I picked up the pen. "Friday is perfect," I said. Friday came, and with it, a sign. It wasn't a flimsy residential, for sale sign, hammered into the small patch of grass out front. Cassandra Vale didn't do flimsy. It was a 4-by-8-foot commercial listing sign, professionally installed on 2 steel posts, announcing the sale of the entire building by Apex Commercial. It was a tombstone for Alex's ambition, and it was beautiful. I expected a hurricane, a tidal wave of screaming voicemails and threatening texts. Instead, I got silence. For 2 full days there was nothing. The quiet was more unnerving than any tirade. Then, on Monday afternoon, my assistant buzzed me. "Mark, your brother is here to see you." Alex didn't look like a man whose kingdom was being sold. He was dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, his expression not of anger, but of deep, paternal disappointment. He walked into my office at Sterling Bridge, past the plaques and awards, and sat down without being invited. He looked around, a faint, condescending smile on his face. "You've done well for yourself, Mark. All this. It's impressive." "What do you want, Alex?" I asked, not bothering to look up from my monitor. He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. His voice was low, conspiratorial, the one he used when he was about to ask for a huge favor. "I want to understand. This building, it was Mom and Dad's legacy. Their home. You're going to sell it to some faceless corporation? Let them gut it? Evict the tenants who've been there for 20 years? Is that what Dad would have wanted?" It was a masterclass in manipulation. He was painting me as the villain, the cold-hearted suit destroying our family's memory. I finally swiveled my chair to face him. "What Dad wanted was a 50-50 split," I said, my voice level. "You tried to make it 80-20. You chose this path, Alex, not me. I'm just the executor following the will and the law. You made an in-kind distribution impossible. This is the consequence." He shook his head slowly, a sad smile on his lips. "It's always about the numbers with you, isn't it? The law, the percentages, never about family. Family is what you call people you can take advantage of." I countered, "This is just business. And you made a bad deal." The calm finally broke. It wasn't a snap, but a slow, chilling crack in his facade. The disappointed mask melted away, revealing the cold fury underneath. He stood up, his posture shifting from relaxed to rigid. "You think your big-shot realtor and your legal papers have won you the game?" he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "But you're forgetting something. I have the keys, remember? I live there. I know the tenants. I know the building's every groan, every leaky pipe, every secret." He walked to the door, then paused, turning back to look at me. The feigned warmth was gone, replaced by a glint of pure malice. "A building's value isn't just on paper, little brother. It's also about its reputation. And I'm about to give it a very, very bad one." The first call came from Cassandra Vale less than 48 hours later. Her voice, usually as cool and polished as marble, had a flinty edge. "Mark, we have a problem. Your brother is a one-man demolition crew for this deal." I listened, my knuckles white on my desk phone, as she laid it out. During a showing with a promising private equity group, Alex had helpfully pointed out a faint water stain on a ceiling tile in the laundry room, spinning a tale of chronic pipe bursts and impending floods. To another potential buyer, he'd casually mentioned the bedbug scare of 19, a complete fabrication. He was a ghost in the machine, popping up in hallways to warn tenants of the, quote, soulless corporate vultures about to buy the building, urging them to complain to the city about non-existent code violations. "He's poisoning the well," Cassandra said, her frustration palpable. "He's not just making it look bad. He's actively creating a paper trail of complaints. One investment group has already pulled out. They said the occupant risk was too high." He was good. I had to give him that. He was using his greatest weapon, his charismatic, seemingly trustworthy personality, to rot the building from the inside out. He thought he was playing a game of perception, a game he had always won. But I was a numbers guy. I dealt in reality, in assets and liabilities. And Alex had just made a critical error. He'd forgotten that in my world everything has a price. I thanked Cassandra, told her to hold firm, and hung up. I didn't call Alex. Yelling would be pointless, gratifying for a moment but strategically useless. Instead, I pulled up the rent roll for the building, a spreadsheet I knew by heart. I highlighted 3 lines: Apartment PH1, Apartment 12A, Apartment 12B. Next to each, in the monthly rent column, was a 0. It was a glaring hole in the estate's balance sheet. He was living in 3 of the most valuable assets, rent-free, while simultaneously torching the value of the entire portfolio. He wasn't just a nuisance. He was a financial drain, an unperforming asset. And as executor, my fiduciary duty wasn't just to sell the building, it was to protect the value of the estate for both beneficiaries, including myself. My next call was to David Chen. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. David, Mark Keller. Alex's campaign of sabotage has begun. He's spooking buyers and fabricating issues. We can file for an injunction to bar him from interfering with the sale, David offered, his voice dry as parchment. But it could be a lengthy and public fight. It might scare off buyers just as much as he is. I have a cleaner idea, I said, looking at the spreadsheet on my screen. As executor, I have a duty to manage the estate's assets, correct? That is your primary function, yes. And that includes generating income from those assets, where applicable. There was a slight pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the legal mind whirring, connecting the dots. Yes, absolutely. You are obligated to ensure the assets are productive. Good, I said. Alex is currently occupying 3 units, the penthouse and the 2 premier Lakeview apartments. He is an occupant, not an owner. The estate is the owner. He has paid no rent. He is costing the estate significant lost income every single day. The silence stretched for a moment longer before David spoke, a note of what sounded like professional admiration in his voice. So you want to bill him? I want to present him with a legally binding invoice. I corrected. For fair market rent on all 3 units, retroactive to the day our parents passed, and he illegally took possession. I also want to establish an ongoing monthly rental liability. This is a debt to the estate, a debt that will be settled from his share of the proceeds upon the sale of the building. It was perfect. It was a move Alex could never see coming. He was fighting a war of words and whispers, of charm and lies. I was responding with a balance sheet. His greatest advantage, his physical presence in the building, was about to become his greatest financial liability. Every day he stayed to play his games, his portion of the inheritance would shrink. He would literally be financing his own defeat. David Chen drafted the letter. It was a masterpiece of cold, hard numbers. It calculated the fair market rent based on comparable units. $8,000 a month for the penthouse, $4, $500 each for the Lakeview apartments. A total of $17,000 per month. The letter detailed the 3 months of back rent now due, a tidy sum of $51,000, and clearly stated that this amount, plus the ongoing monthly rent and statutory interest, constituted a formal lien against his beneficial interest in the Keller estate. I didn't mail it, I didn't email it. I had it delivered by the same stone-faced courier who had delivered the notice of sale. I pictured Alex opening the envelope, his smug confidence turning to ash in his mouth. He expected a shouting match, a legal threat to evict him, a battle he could drag out in court for months. He never expected an invoice. He never expected his sabotage to have a price tag. He had the keys. He knew the tenants. He knew the building's secrets. But I knew the one secret he'd always ignored. Numbers don't care about your feelings. They just add up. And his bill was coming due. The silence from Alex lasted exactly 18 hours. It was the kind of heavy, pressurized silence that precedes a dam break. I didn't have to wait long for the flood. He didn't bother with an appointment. He blew past my assistant, his face a mottled red, the invoice crumpled in his fist. He slammed it down on my desk, scattering a stack of quarterly reports. The tailored suit was gone, replaced by a wrinkled shirt. The mask of the charming golden child had been ripped away, leaving behind the raw, spoiled core. An invoice? He snarled, the word laced with venomous disbelief. You're charging me rent? To live in my own home? It's the estate's home, I replied, my voice as steady as a stock ticker. I didn't even lean back in my chair. An asset you are actively devaluing. As executor, I am obligated to protect that value. You are an occupant. Occupants pay rent. The bill stands. This is theft! You're trying to steal my inheritance with your little legal tricks. I picked up a pen and tapped the invoice. This isn't a trick, Alex. It's an accounting entry. Every day you spend sabotaging the sale, you're not just scaring off buyers. You're increasing your personal debt to the estate. Your half of the inheritance is shrinking by $558 every single day. Keep it up. The math works for me." For a second I saw a flicker of genuine confusion in his eyes. He didn't understand. He truly didn't grasp the concept of consequence. He thought this was a street fight, a battle of wills. He couldn't comprehend that I'd turned it into a spreadsheet. His face hardened again. "You think you're so smart," he spat. "There won't be any proceeds to split when I'm done. No one will buy that building. I will burn its reputation to the ground. Then we'll see who's left holding the bill." He stormed out, leaving the crumpled invoice on my desk like a dead bird. He thought it was a threat. I saw it as a business plan. His business plan. And it was a spectacularly bad one. His campaign escalated from sabotage to scorched earth warfare. He started a tenants' association, appointing himself president. He filed a dozen frivolous complaints with the city's building department, citing everything from, quote, inconsistent water temperature to, quote, auditory disturbances from phantom squirrels. Each complaint had to be legally addressed by David Chen, with the legal fees meticulously logged as an estate expense. Cassandra Vale called me, but her tone had changed. It was no longer frustration, it was strategic interest. "Mark, your brother is a menace, but this invoice has changed the game," she said. "I'm no longer presenting him as an uncooperative occupant. I'm framing him as a motivated seller." "Explain," I said. "Simple. I show the buyers the lien. I explain that every delay, every stunt he pulls, directly reduces his own payout. A new owner can use that debt as leverage in an eviction proceeding. He's not just a problem. He's a problem with a quantifiable, ticking clock solution." A few of my more aggressive investors are intrigued. They see a discount. Alex thought he was wielding a sword, but I had turned it into a weight chained to his own leg. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank. And then, he did something I hadn't anticipated. Something so perfectly, poetically stupid, that I almost had to admire it. The call came from the building's frantic superintendent at 2 a.m. "Mr. Keller, it's a disaster!" A main water line on the top floor burst. "The penthouse is flooded. It's coming down into the 12th floor units." My units. No, the estate's units. And his. I arrived to find a scene of controlled chaos. Water was sheeting down the marble walls of the lobby. The superintendent had managed to shut off the main, but the damage was done. I took the stairs up to the penthouse. The door was ajar. And there was Alex, standing ankle-deep in murky water, a massive pipe wrench lying near his feet. He looked up at me, his face a mask of feigned shock. "Mark, thank God you're here," he stammered, a little too loud. "The pipes, they just gave way. Like I've been telling everyone, this whole building is a lemon," but he'd made a fatal error. Standing next to him was a man in a windbreaker with Apex Commercial embroidered on the chest. One of Cassandra's agents, who had been scheduled for a late-night walkthrough with an international buyer. The agent just stared at Alex, then at the wrench, then at the clean, fresh gouges on the pipe fitting that screamed, "Tool marks, not corrosion." He didn't have to say a word. I just nodded. I looked at Alex, standing in the ruins of his prized penthouse, the water soaking the designer rugs and custom cabinetry he'd so proudly claimed. He'd tried to create a problem to scare away a buyer. Instead, he had created a multi-million-dollar insurance claim he had just voided. The agent from Apex Commercial didn't raise his voice. He simply looked from the wrench to the mangled pipe fitting, then back to my brother's panicked face. He gave me a slow, knowing nod, turned and walked out, his phone already to his ear. Alex's stammering died in his throat. The reality of the witness began to sink in, but he still hadn't grasped the full scope of his catastrophe. "He can't prove anything," Alex hissed, kicking at the murky water. "He doesn't have to," I said, my voice quiet in the echoing, dripping space. "The insurance adjuster will. They're experts at telling the difference between corrosion and a pipe wrench. Willful destruction of an estate asset, that's a felony, Alex." I gestured around at the devastation, the ruined custom kitchen, the warped hardwood floors. The emergency restoration crew will cost $30,000. The complete renovation? Let's call it $250,000. A nice, round number. He stared at me, his mind unable to process the numbers. The estate will pay for it. Yes, I agreed, my tone dangerously calm. The estate will pay. And since you caused the damage, David is already drafting a lien for the full amount, $280,000, deducted directly from your half of the proceeds. You just spent over $250,000 of your own inheritance to what? Prove a point? The color drained from his face. He finally understood. He hadn't just flooded the penthouse, he'd flooded his own bank account. But I wasn't done. My phone buzzed. A text from Cassandra. "Oh, and the buyer?" I said, holding up the screen so he could see. "They're still in. In fact, they've submitted a new, non-negotiable offer. It's a bit lower, naturally, by exactly $280,000. They thank you for financing the renovations." I pocketed the phone. "I've accepted on behalf of the estate." He didn't just fall to his knees. His entire body seemed to give out, slumping against a soaked, ruined wall, as if his bones had turned to dust. He hadn't burned my kingdom down. He'd just paid, out of his own pocket, to build a throne for the next king. "All right, I need your honest take on this. Was selling the entire building a fair move as the executor, or just a petty way to get back at my brother?"